Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Information Technology Basics for Executives. The purpose of this course is to give executives and other management leaders a little bit about information technology to help them in their IT decision-making processes. Today we'll be talking about 6 items, or 5 items. First will be what is IT. Second will be basic IT concepts. The third is how do you get successful results. Fourth is what causes an IT project to fail. This is kind of an important one. And the fifth is IT as a practice. What is information technology? Well, let's break it into its 2 forms, information and technology. Information is essentially the gathering of data and giving you something you can make decisions with. Data is nothing unless you can make a decision with it and it informs you. So data is like raw fish and information is like sushi. Technology is a sharp knife in a bamboo roller. Management is a good sushi chef. Excuse me. There are 3 levels of IT. The tinkerer, as you can see, I use this little thing. It's sushi, but it's pretty. It's kind of goofy. It's basically, would you want to eat that? Well, it might solve your hunger needs, but it definitely isn't going to be very good. The computer shop is more like the Chinese food buffet, where the sushi's been sitting out for a while, it's all the same and not quite as good. And professionally trained, your sushi looks like the perfect platter at Benihana's. Basic IT concepts. I'm going to break IT into the basic disciplines inside of IT. IT is just like any other industry or profession. There are different disciplines within that profession. Me personally, I'm a network engineer and information assurance specialist. I like to work with business process auditing and help customers learn how to use technology to focus on their business. But there are major areas, the first being telecommunications, and then hardware, and then software, a refresh policy, outsourcing, co-location versus in-house, and virtualization. Telecommunications. Telecommunications is essentially, it is what it says it is. So the nice part about IT is IT, basically, we're pretty simple people. We don't really come up with fancy names, and we only speak in English and not Latin. So the first one is telephones, and the second part is communicating on the telephone. So telephones, you have the plain old telephone system, which we call POTS, a direct inward dialing, which we call DID, and voice over IP. And then in data, you have your T1s, your bonding of T1s, and your types of connections between inter-branch companies, your MPLS and your VPN, which MPLS stands for multi-protocol label switching, and virtual private network for VPN. Hardware. Hardware, you have workstations. In workstations, you have PCs, thin clients, and dumb terminals. You have servers, standalone or blade, or virtual machines. Storage, you have your RAIDs, your SANs, and your NASs. There's not a whole lot different from a user's perspective as between a SAN and a NAS, but from a technology perspective, they're tremendously different and provide you different resources for your organization. Different types of software. You have your CRMs, your customer relations management, your ERPs, your enterprise resource planning application, your AIS, your accounting information, your OS, Windows XP, Mac OS X, Snow Leopard, and so on. Those are your operating systems. You have productivity tools, things like Word, Excel, the Office suites. And you have CAD and CAM as other examples, and you may have GIS if you're a geologist. There are different applications that are specific to your industry. What is a refresh policy? Well, a refresh policy is as a rule, it's actually more cost effective for your business to do a refresh policy, which means every 3 to 5 years you plan to replace your hardware. For a couple reasons. One, your warranties have expired. You have no more tax benefit from depreciation. Software may require new machines. And new equipment raises morale. New equipment is more reliable. This one about morale is kind of important, where you can actually make your employees feel a lot better about themselves just by providing them with new machines. They'll feel more involved in the organization and feel more appreciated. Outsourcing. Outsourcing fills in for knowledge and or experience gaps. One of the key features in IT that you have to understand from a management point of view is that Just because you're in IT doesn't mean you know all the answers that have to do with computers. I personally am terrible with webs. Now, I have my realm. I can write websites, I can do that stuff. I just choose not to because I'm not very good at it. Provides for specialized support for specialized tools. Sometimes you may be deploying something that requires a special knowledge, and it's actually faster and more cost efficient to actually use a specialized person who has the right tools in their tool bag. Helps to augment manpower shortages. Sometimes you have a large project and you need to have these things meet a special timeline, so you're going to bring in more staff that's going to help you facilitate that project. Occasionally an IT controls compilation and or audit should be performed by a third party. I always throw compilation in. I sit on a few boards for nonprofit organizations and other businesses, and when you're on a board, an audit is a dirty word just because it's very expensive. Because essentially when you do an audit, somebody has to put their name at on the bottom line, puts their life, their livelihood, and their professionalism on the line, and their reputation more than anything else. Where a compilation, they'll do the work, they'll give you the answers, but they don't have the liability that they would if they called it an audit. Co-location versus in-house. Co-location offers a couple benefits: redundant infrastructure, security and compliance, service level agreements. Now, service level agreements are such that if your organization needs to make sure that the internet is returned to service within a certain period of time, service level agreement is going to give you that power. It's going to say, if our internet goes down, we will recover it as your internet provider within a certain period of time, usually 4 hours on normal telecom contracts. Now, you can get more aggressive with that, and you can get more loose with that depending on your SLA and your risk needs. Rental of space and equipment, 24/7 support. They have people in-house who will jump on working on your server and try and get it back online. In-house gives you the 8 to 5 support plus overtime and physical control over equipment 24/7. I know that there are only 2 lines on the in-house piece and there are 6 lines under co-location, but this last line, physical control over equipment, is the most powerful of all the lines, because it actually gives you some level of assurance, and it also works for you in a risk-adverse environment. Here's kind of a little drawing of what IT basically does from a outsider perspective in a multi-branch organization. When your IT is outsourced, your branches, which are disparate from your organization, your corporate headquarters is here, your factory is here, you have stores here, and your colos here, and your outsourced IT. In these locations, you don't have an IT guy in every location now. In the biggest organizations, our IT department doesn't reside in every single branch. What they do is they use the same tools that an outsourced provider would use to provide you the same operation. Now, in a network, this is actually the logical way of looking at it, and what that does is all these branches connect to the same cloud. All you're doing with your outsourced IT provider is connecting them to your cloud. Virtualization. Virtualization, it's the newest, hottest thing. It's really a neat technology. It provides you the ability to use multiple levels of equipment. In the past, you used to be dependent on your hardware. Once you installed a software operating system on a server, that operating system was so ingrained in that server that if you changed the server, the hardware, you needed to boost it, you would have to reinstall everything, reconfigure, rebuild. Well, in virtualization, you just move that virtualized server onto the new virtual server, or the server manager. It's seamless. You don't have to have downtime. It's a much more aggressive way of looking at hardware upgrades. It requires less technical knowledge, where you can actually have your servers built by the software company, or the actual application servers built by the software company, and you can have any provider come out and do the virtualization for you and move that equipment over without actually having to get the software company engaged. As a rule, though, it is good to always have them engaged in some form. they should at least know you're doing this. They may have some qualms against it. If so, then you need to let them in, because you don't want to void your warranties or any kind of service agreements with your software vendors, because that's your lifeblood. There's some major players, VMware, Xen, Microsoft, and Apple. They all have virtualization operating systems, as well as Citrix. But the major player is VMware. They're driving the market. Let's look at virtualization from that logic again. All these different locations, they don't know what your servers look like because they're in the cloud anyways. They're always connecting to the cloud. They don't know what your equipment looks like at that